I can't see you or me while I'm doing this. I hate that.
Do you
All
wanna
right.
do you wanna see me?
How would I? I think it's like
Oh, you
Zoom,
can't
right? When
see
I'm
it at
in like
all.
huh?
Yeah, you can't see it at all. That's
Yeah,
too
it's like
bad.
Zoom. It's like Zoom when you're in full share on the PowerPoint. You can't,
Yeah,
right? So
okay.
it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. All right, everybody. So lucky for you, this is a perfect segue from Jennifer to what I'm going to talk about because Jennifer talked about websites, the importance of websites, and media coverage and visibility is the thing that can get people to your website so you can get them to their ultimate destination, which might be joining your course, or in this case, we're talking about book sales, right? So, we're going to start with kind of why media matters in academia. So, if this feels like a weird place to start, it's really important for this target audience to kind of feel comfortable with understanding where media fits into your research and your academic journey and career, because I know a lot of people have questions like, why does media matter, or should I do it or shouldn't I do it? I know in academe there's this thing where it's like if you're on television and doing media coverage, maybe you're not doing real research, which I want to remind you is not true. You can do multiple things at once and still do research and still get media coverage and all of that good stuff. But if you're here, you have some understanding of the importance of media coverage in your work. And from personal experience, I know that the more media coverage you get, the more academics and scholars will find your work, especially PhD students and people who are creating new research. They're going to use your work if it's more visible outside of just the academic space. So, why media matters in academia, my 3 points to share with you today are research without visibility risk irrelevance, right? So, if we're just publishing and talking to our other PhDs and at academic conferences, then we're not reaching many, many, many more people that would benefit from our work and could actually fund our work and help us continue to do the work in actual communities or outside of higher ed, which we'll talk about in my presentation as well. Also, policymakers fund what they hear about. So, policymakers, people that have grant money and funding for the work that you want to continue doing, they're not always going to academic databases, and they're definitely not going to Google Scholar as much as they might just be tuning in to media coverage, media that they're watching, blogs, popular blogs, places like I don't know, Forbes.com, but even podcasts that they tune into and just regular everyday media that you see on television and social media. So, when I talk about media today, I am talking about social media as well as traditional media. At times through my presentation, I will make a distinction and let you know, hey, right here, I'm specifically talking about traditional media, like, going on Good Morning America or getting featured in the Washington Post. But then I'll also let you know when I'm talking about podcasts or just like social media content. But in general, when I talk about media, I'm talking about platforms and things that give us visibility, such as social media and traditional media. The last thing on this slide is, understanding that media is the bridge between your work and the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is a lot bigger than higher ed. And there's so many opportunities out there for you if you can get in front of regular people that are in corporations, run corporations, just the everyday person that might be interested in your work that can benefit from it, can learn from it, but can also put some money in your pocket, to be quite honest. But they need to find you, and you need to be talking to them in a way that they can understand. So, goal one is to use media to boost impact. And some things that you need to think about is aligning your media strategy with your research goals. So I wrote down a couple of questions actually while I was listening to Jennifer do her presentation for you to kind of think about in terms of aligning your media strategy with research goals. I hear a lot of academics say that they don't want to do the work to get media coverage if it's going to distract from their higher ed goals or their research goals. And I don't think it has to, if you're smart, if you have a strategy, and if everything is aligned. Media will only enhance what you're doing with your research, especially in terms of funding and getting more opportunities around your work. So a couple of questions you want to ask yourself in thinking about how to align your media strategy with your research goals is, what do you want media attainment to look like for you? Okay, this is a personal question for each individual because it looks different. Me thinking about what being a thought leader means and getting media coverage may be different than what you think, and that's okay. You just want to be clear on what that looks like, because then you can reverse engineer your strategy. Okay, there are maybe niche specific media outlets that you want to be on, so you want to write those down, right? Because we want to build out your personal media coverage strategy and align it with your goals, right? The next question is, why do you want media coverage? Going after media coverage and getting it on a consistent basis does take work, but when you're clear about the purpose, then it's going to help you understand why the hard work is worth it. And so what is your purpose? What is your why statement for wanting to have a bigger platform? Because if you're seeking media coverage, what you're seeking is a bigger platform so that you can do what, right? That's the question you really need to answer. Maybe it's to help a specific community, maybe it's to make more money to pour into a specific organization, right? What is it for you? And so really the overall question is, what's the end goal? And if you can answer that question, just doing the work of getting media coverage will feel more worth it when it gets hard and difficult, because it is a lot of work. um Media coverage will build you credibility beyond academe. And I can tell you from the clients that I work with and from personal experience, it really is lucrative when you can start breaking down your complex understanding of whatever your research is and going to talk about it on a podcast, on a high level media outlet, because the opportunities are just so numerous once you start hitting these certain media platforms that people are actually tuning into. Um, it's a way to reach policymakers and key stakeholders. I'm talking about like grant funding for your research, and just awesome collaborations with corporations and startup companies, where they see your work and they want to work with you. They want to align with you. Even the easy things like speaking engagements, but the media coverage will allow you to charge more because it's a perception and a credibility factor that can't be understated, right? So media coverage will boost your impact in all of those areas, not just more hits on your Google citations, but just overall in general for the goals that you're trying to reach. So crafting a media aligned research message. So really, for my academics, messaging is probably the thing that we have to spend the most time on. So this image here is a meme. It's actually a meme. It's actually one static image that I post on LinkedIn and Instagram often, reminding people that the way that you talk about a thing is going to determine if you get visibility or not. It's going to determine if people will resonate with it or not. Just think about a basic college classroom. If I go into the classroom and I introduce myself and I say my PhD is in intercultural and rhetorical communication, students are not moved by that, right? But if I say, "Hey, I did my dissertation on the Boondocks comic," everybody sits up in their seat. They want to know more. They ask questions. And you have that same thing with your research. I promise you. It's all in the messaging, the way you say it. So, one helpful way to think about this is just think about all of the different angles you can talk about your work. And, I'm from the city of Philadelphia. So when I kind of think about what are the different angles I can talk about, I always think about, will my neighbor understand what I'm saying and be moved by it? Like if my neighbor Miss Mary is not going to understand like what my thing is about, then I'm probably not explaining it to an everyday average person well. And so you want to kind of think about it in those terms. And I don't like to say dumb down your message because it's not really what it is. You're not dumbing down your message. You're just tailoring it to specific audiences. Just like you do when you go into a college classroom. If you're teaching freshmen, you don't kind of teach them the same way that you teach seniors, right? So simplify your message without dumbing it down. I don't want you to feel that way, but I can guarantee you that when you're teaching your stuff in a college classroom, you teach it differently than if you go to an academic conference and you're talking to other PhDs. Think about it like that. Use stories or metaphors that connect emotionally. I was just on a coaching call with a client and she's doing some amazing research. And she said that she just published an op-ed, which is amazing, right? That's media coverage. And she was asking me, "Oh, should I just take quotes from my op-ed and kind of post those quotes on social media?" And I'm like, "No. Like nobody's going to share that, right?" So I started to help her think, tell me a story about how this research came to be. Tell me where you fit into this research. What was difficult about doing this? The stories around your process of even creating the research is what's going to move people. So when I talk about my dissertation on the Boondocks comic, one of the pieces of content that does really well on social media is actually me just talking about how people didn't believe in my dissertation, everything I had to overcome to make it something that was important, right? So, what are the different stories, not just hey, this is our research findings, but turning data into a story. Now, understanding the craft of storytelling is you have to study it. It's an art. This is why I work with people one on one, but this is just a great place for you to get started and start thinking this way. Because if you go on a podcast, people connect to the person being interviewed on a podcast because of the stories they're telling, right? This is how people sell books on a podcast. They just talk about their journey and their story. And if you like them, you go and buy their book. Sometimes they don't spend the whole hour talking about the stuff in their book. They're just talking about their life and their story and what kind of brings them to the work, right? So tie your research to current events or trends as well. What's going on in society? What's going on in culture? What are the conversations now that are in the news media that you can lend an opinion or voice to? Let me just stay on this point real quick. I find, and I don't know if there's a correlation between this and higher ed, but a lot of us are scared to share our opinion in the media or in an op-ed or on social media because we're scared about pushback, blowback, or people disagreeing with us. But the whole thing about an opinion is it's an opinion, but you are a credible expert that has studied this. So your opinion weighs more than a lot of people. And so your opinion is backed by facts. And so when we're talking about getting media coverage, you need to be thinking about current events, trends, things that are happening right now, and how does my research and my opinion about what is happening connect to these current topics. That's going to get you publication in an op-ed. When you talk about those things on social media, that's how the producer is going to find you. Producers are looking on social media all the time for expert voices. When you start talking about your research in the ways that I'm telling you, they will start coming to you. I promise you, right? It's like they'll say, "Hey, I saw you talk about this, and we're doing a segment on XYZ." But you got to do it, and not just once. You have to make it a part of a practice, right? Like something that, hey, every day I'm going to share my opinion about X, Y, and Z, and make sure it's connected to you in your wheelhouse. I had to learn that, right? I would get called to do media interviews a lot, and at the very beginning I would just say yes to everything, even things that were just like adjacent to my research area. And that became very stressful. So just from experience, I would tell you, once you start talking about your stuff and doing op-eds and landing all these things, keep the stress level down by staying in your wheelhouse. I can promise you it'll be better for you. So, like real world examples, a policy brief or a white paper can become a segment on local TV, right? An op ed can spark interest from a foundation or a nonprofit. A podcast feature can lead to like funding for you or for a particular community. Now, in my Power Your Research program, I generate a list of almost 100 podcasts in a pitch template for my clients, and so all they have to do is send the emails off because they get the email addresses and everything. But without joining Power Your Research, you can do this work on your own. There are very cheap freelancers that will create your podcast list for you. And then all you have to do is send the emails off to land these podcast media features. In terms of the op-eds, it's a lot of sending emails to editors of these op-eds, right? So here's an exact process of what I used to do when I was really writing op-eds. Something trending would be going on. I would say, "Oh, like I can have an opinion about this. This is in my wheelhouse." I would write the 1,000-word op-ed, and then I would pitch it to like a media outlet, right? Um, and the reason why I would do it this way is because you get a quicker yes or no. And I like to get a quick yes or a quick no, and if I get a no, move on to the next thing. The op-ed is already written, right? Instead of
Love
it,
that.
it saves you a lot of time, yo. Instead of, especially when you're catching trends and you're catching relevant things. Instead of you send an email, "Hey, I have this topic that I want to talk about. Do you think it would fit your publication?" Because now you got to wait for the reply. Right now, spend a few days waiting. If it's not already written and they say yes, now how long is it going to take you to write it? So now the person's waiting, and that trend might be gone by the time you do all of that. My method, I think, makes people nervous because you're like, what if no one accepts it? For me, I'm just confident that someone will, because you can pitch this way, you get a quick yes or no, and then you can pitch the next person. But even if it doesn't get picked up, let's say if it doesn't, post it on your blog. It's still not a lost opportunity. Now you post it on your blog. Now you turn it into an Instagram reel where you're talking about it. Now you post it on Threads or whatever. Well, then you post it on LinkedIn, right? So it's never a waste, right? It's never a waste. Okay. And that's how you can end up getting invited to a local TV segment.